Pop Punk and Pizza podcast is presented by Pop Punk Takeout, which is a monthly subscription box that delivers merchandise from pop punk artists from all over the world directly to your door in a takeout box. You can choose from a pizza takeout box, which is the larger version, or a smaller version, which is like a Chinese food takeout box. You can choose from either of those every month at poppunktakeout.com. Also follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Pop Punk Takeout. And just in time for the holidays, the very first Christmas compilation they're putting out. It's called the Very Pop Punk Christmas Volume 1, and you can actually pre-order that as well right now at poppunktakeout.com. Actually, a lot of the bands that are on this Christmas compilation are bands that have been here on Pop Punk and Pizza, including Settle Your Scores, TLB, Tiny Kingdoms, Last Letters, Stop, Drop, Rewind, Eugene Levy, and so many others. So find out about all that stuff at poppunktakeout.com.
I'm going out, I gotta go. I'll bang a rang on the radio. So turn it up, I'm telling you. I think I'm ready for something new. Hey, hello, it's nice to meet ya. Hey, come in and have a slice of pizza. Hey, hello, it's nice to meet ya. Hey, come in and have a slice of pizza.
You're listening to Pop Punk and Pizza with Jacques Lamour.
Yo, what is happening? Welcome to Pop Punk and Pizza. I'm, of course, Jacques Lamour. So great to have you here. I hope you're actually enjoying a slice of pizza as you're listening to this podcast right now, or at least eating something that you enjoy, or maybe you're not eating at all. Maybe you're doing the dishes, or you're on your way to work. Whatever time of the day is that you're listening to this, thank you so much. Got a great show for you once again. We are going to be welcomed by one of the guitarists from Tsunami Bomb in just a little bit, Andy. He also has a record label that we're going to be talking about called Sell the Heart Records. But before Andy comes on, we are welcoming a band that I've had the pleasure of seeing, although it's been a while because, well, we all know, pandemic, right? I've talked to them so many times about coming onto the show. We're finally making it happen. So let's please welcome Jack and Alex of Bad Planning.
Yeah.
Hey, guys. What's up? Of course. So happy to have you guys. As I was getting ready for this podcast, I was trying to think of, and I guess it's only one time I've seen you guys play, and I guess that was at the ever-famous Snooze Fest.
Yeah, would that have been Shubas, or however you say it?
Shubas, yeah.
Shubas,
And that would have been 2019.
2019, yeah, the 2019 Snooze Fest. That was that was one of the last shows we played, like that whole year. Yeah.
I was just thinking, it's November already.
Yeah.
Have you heard if Kevin from Guardrail is going to do it? Because I haven't talked to him about it.
Yes, it will happen. It will definitely happen. I don't know. I talked to him kind of recently about it. I don't know when exactly, but there will be one coming, and it should be very dope. I don't know when. I should also preface that, but it's great. Just knowing Snooze Fest, and Kevin's really good with that, and I mean it's a great show.
Oh, hell yeah! So anyone that's just now hearing about Snooze Fest for the first time, just to put it simply, it's a yearly show, and I want to say it's always in January. Yeah. It's always in January. It's in the Chicago area. Everyone's invited to wear the silliest pajamas they can come up with, or just wear, pajamas that you would normally wear, whatever it is. You come out and come to the show, and there's usually, there's like 8 bands usually, if not more, that play. Most of them from the Chicago area, but sometimes they're actually regional too, from other parts of the Midwest. And the money from the show actually goes to a good cause. And for most recent years, it's mostly been the Allison Cares Foundation. But I know when the virtual Snooze Fest was happening. It was going towards the Chicago Independent Venue League. I know
Yeah.
that.
There were 2 virtual Snooze Fests, and we actually got to do both of them. The first one I did this by myself. I think I recorded it in like my daughter's like nursery room because it was the only room that was quiet at the time. And then the second one, me and Jack did in my dad's basement. It was super fun. I had a great time.
You know what? I'm literally wearing the exact same outfit from that video.
Are you really?
Yeah,
God, that's funny.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I remember. You know, I don't remember you wearing that outfit, but I do remember the second one. Was it full band? The
No,
second time
that
you guys
was
did the
acoustic.
virtual?
It was acoustic.
It was acoustic. Okay.
They asked us if we could do it full band, and we would have liked to. And there was a few other bands doing it acoustic, and I guess it kind of made the most sense for us right then. Jack had like just come back, which I'm sure someone will touch on later in the podcast. But Jack had like just kind of come back to the band, and it was just like kind of really. It was like our first like performance, so to speak. It was like our warm welcome back. It was so nice.
Yeah.
It was actually a lot of fun to record. We'll probably just do it again for fun at some point. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I mean, there's a lot that's happened since we last like actually saw each other face to face. Because I'm pretty sure that was probably the last time was back in 2019. You know, or maybe that was 2020.
One of those two. I wore a unicorn onesie. That was the most memorable thing for me.
You know, the pandemic, and I know I'm not the only one. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. It's like thrown off my perception of time.
Completely.
Yeah.
It's like a whole year of what we would have had for like work, playing shows and stuff just didn't happen, basically, which was necessary, obviously. But you know, it definitely throws off my perception. Like that show was in 2020, but I felt like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Like that was in 2019, but I felt like it was last week. You know, so
yeah. I forget basic things, time related. Like I have to question how old I am all the time because you know we entered the pandemic. I was 21. Now I'm 23. I was like, what am I? 24 now? Like, no.
Yeah, you're probably confused. Like I'm still in that 21 stage.
Yeah.
Like,
and my maturity got paused. Hasn't really advanced since since like March 2020.
Yeah, and I remember. When I did see you guys play, though, that was, Alex, that was before you were a dad, and I think even before that was ever thought of.
Yeah.
And you were probably still a teenager or about to be 20.
That's a good. I was 9. Oh shit! Wow. I don't. Yeah. If it's God, the timeline. My brain is fucked.
Back to that, right? Yeah, back to that whole timeline thing.
I think it was winter of 2020. Okay, I know. If I remember this correctly, it was January 2021. Like it was still like winter of 2020, January of 2021, I believe. And yeah, because we played a show like 2 shows before that was when I told everybody like, oh, I'm gonna be a dad. I think, but maybe it was 2019.
No, I think it was definitely 2019.
Yeah, I don't know.
We didn't play any shows in January 2021. That was still pandemic time.
That was still yeah.
Yeah.
Still, that would have been earlier this year.
Yeah. So, oh my God.
Yes.
Well,
that is for sure.
Well, to figure it out, like since then, you actually have 2 kids now.
I have 2 kids. I do.
So you know, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you so much.
And I love the. I love the Facebook statuses you put up about still being a virgin. And I'm like,
it's crazy.
Like, I don't
know how all this happened.
I don't understand it, but I just go along with it because I think it's hilarious. And everyone else is like, they either think it's funny as well, or they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? You have 2 kids.
My grandmother's very confused. She's very, very confused.
Did you tell her you're like the Virgin Mary except a male?
Yes. I'm just like you know, it just kind of happened. It just wasn't there one day and then it was. That's all. You know, I don't know how. Again, virgin, but yeah.
I mean, they do have ways of extracting, you know, semen when
Yes.
like a person is dead or asleep or
Maybe that's what happened to me. The alien threw that shit or something. I don't know. That's crazy.
I mean it could have. I remember seeing an episode of I'm a big Law and Order SVU fan and I love like this is kind of graphic, but maybe someone else remembers this episode where it was like this very well-known famous author. He's very wealthy, but he was like it's like in his 80s and his wife was like I don't know in her 40s and she wanted a kid with him. And so like he's on his deathbed in this scene in this episode of Law and Order SVU and he had either just passed away or he's about to, and they were about to stick some type of device in him
Huh.
in order to harvest his seed, you know? And I'm just like, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
It's just so bizarre and so weird on so many different levels.
That is weird.
It's the future. That's what it is.
I guess, but so it's you know it's more than possible this day and age. Obviously, that's not why you guys are here. This is what we're talking about with the amount of time we have. Perfect. How many people have stopped listening now? Besides becoming a dad, Alex, bad planning. You guys recently are now signed.
Yes.
So how did that come about?
So to kind of like back it up, I mean, Jumpstart is just such a great label. Like just the amount of talent that's come through and released and worked with that label is kind of unreal, especially for us. Like because the bands that we're talking about are some of our favorites. Since high school, we've been listening to MXPX. Obviously, they work with Jumpstart. You've had Mike Herrera on the show.
Crucial
Dudes, Wilhelm Scream, Belvedere,
Yeah.
New Vandal, like so many amazing bands. So it was always like kind of like a dream of ours to be a part of that group. And so when we were finally ready to like, all right, we're gonna do an album as opposed to like a 5-song or something like that, like EP or whatever, we were very excited and we wanted to like make the most of it. So just a steady stream of emails and trying to get in touch with Jeremy, who's been amazing and been awesome this whole time, and just setting our demo, setting a final version and kind of like our plan and how we wanted to lay out this record. That's all it is. It was really just us advocating for ourselves. We don't have like an agent or a manager or anything, so we kind of everything we do has to kind of come from us. And Jeremy was awesome and gracious enough to take us on and wanted to put out the record. And he likes the songs, and that meant the world to us. Just knowing that he's put out so many awesome records. I mean, people have heard me not shut up about Crucial Dudes for years now, and it's like the 61 Pen is a Jumpstart record. So I mean, it's been great. And Jeremy's awesome, and he set us up with Mike from Earshot Media. So shout out to Mike.
I was gonna say you have one of the greatest publicists in music history, in my opinion, anyway.
Absolutely, and even just that group, like being a part of that media group has been unreal too. Like some of our favorite bands are also on that media group, like the label and the media group, right? So like two of the biggest bands that probably influenced the album we're gonna put out at Fortes are like Such Gold and Rest Easy, and they're both on Earshot.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yeah,
it's pretty amazing. Want to add anything to that, Jack?
No, I mean, I can only echo just everything you said. Like you go to Jumpstart or Earshot's website and you just scroll through the bands they represent and have worked with, and it's like, oh, I listened to that band 2 hours ago. Okay, yeah, I streamed that album on repeat like a month and a half ago. Like that's one of my favorites. That's one of my favorites. So just to be a part of that, it's been pretty unreal for us. So far.
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think being able to work with Mike and then have Jumpstart in the mix as well is pretty cool because Mike from Earshot, he's literally worked with almost everybody we know.
Yeah, right.
Or like everyone we started listening to as kids and still listen to as adults, So he's one of my favorite PR people to work with on a regular basis. And also, getting to Alex, I remember you messaging me probably earlier this year, and you were like, "Yeah, we're working on a new EP or like a full length or whatever." And that's when you're like, "I want to get on the show, blah blah blah, to talk about this." Then I think all this, then maybe Jumpstart came after that. I don't know if you had,
Probably.
I don't know if you had secured that at the time.
So I definitely remember that conversation and wanting to be on the show. When I texted you about all that, or messaged you rather, whatever. We had A Year Without Sleep finish. I think we might have been in the studio for the rest of it because A Year Without Sleep was on the record. And we actually hadn't secured the work with Jumpstart until we actually sent like our final versions of the songs that will become at Fortes. I can't say that without stuttering.
That's a hard one.
So I don't know if we were probably in conversations because we had them for quite some time, just kind of going back and forth about like just pretty much the songs at that point. But yeah, we hadn't fully secured it until probably May, and I think that conversation was in the fall or winter. So yeah.
And I mean, between now and then, you did put out a split as well.
The split was from, so again.
Oh, was that from last year?
Yeah, it was.
The split was from last year. See, there we go with the whole timeline thing again.
Yes. Yeah, that split with Semester Abroad. Yep.
Okay. Yep. See, for some reason, that's how long this pandemic has been going on for, where 2021 feels like literally the same as 2020.
It does. It's kind of like, it's like converged.
Yeah, exactly. So this new release, this new EP is coming out next year, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's sometime early 2022, and then as of right now, it's looking more like closer to maybe like spring 2022. And that's actually really great considering a lot of bands' other release plans are getting pushed back sometimes a whole year. So Jeremy's been very gracious and helpful, and keeping us in the loop about like where we're at in the process. It looks like we're actually making pretty good progress from our stream of emails with him and stuff. So we're very excited. I don't want to add anything to that, but.
It's funny how first it was the actual virus that was prolonging the release of everyone's new music, but now I guess it's not it. I guess it's still the virus that's preventing the release of new music, except it's more of like the repercussions, like now I feel like it's not because of the pandemic directly, it's because of the vinyl manufacturers are so backed up now. And that's because also of the pandemic and all these supply shortages and workforce shortages. It's like, whoever thought that was going to happen
2 years, a year after, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I didn't grasp that it was hitting like small bands like us, obviously, like the shortages on like vinyl and whatnot, but it was also like it was getting up to like bigger bands too. Like I saw Laura Jane Grace, she tweeted something about how like if anybody had a release plan for 2022, it's definitely not coming up for 2023.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, she against me. Like they're a huge giant band. You think that they would just have more resources, but it's really hit pretty much bands of every level, it seems, like upper and lower. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like
it's going to be one of those things where a person orders a vinyl record and it takes so long to get to them that they completely forgot about it. Yeah. And it just shows up one day like several months later and they're like, "Oh, yeah. I forgot about this." Yeah. And it'll be like a nice little surprise,
Yeah.
So with that being said, I mean, it's going to be sometime, it sounds like spring 2022. What are you guys doing with that time, in between now and then?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to play as many shows as we can. We played 5 shows in October.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we're trying to book, more in the coming months, just so we can get out and play in front of people, and also just like have fun. We just came off, a full year of not doing anything, so we just want to get out there, full release out or not. We just want to play shows. And we have a goal of writing more too. Like Alex said, like with releases probably getting pushed back just because of all the shortages. We want to keep writing. We don't want to stop. So goals is, get back in and record at some point, get some new ideas into demo form and go from there.
We've got we got a couple songs that we're, like, I would say writing wise, we're just about done with.
Yeah.
And we're proud of them.
Yeah.
Right now.
Say the least.
They'll come out eventually and everyone will be able to hear them. But the ones that we're writing right now, are awesome. That sounds famous, but I'm sorry. The songs that we're writing right now, we are happy with how they are sounding. We are very stoked about it.
Yeah.
I knew what you meant, but
Whether they are awesome will be up to the listener. How about that?
Yeah.
there you go. I from my standpoint though, I'm thoroughly impressed with how your songwriting skills have progressed just since the time I met you a couple years ago to now. There's a big difference in, recording value, and the songwriting value as well. And what I love about Bad Planning, it's a mishmash of punk rock styles.
Thank you, man. Yes.
From over the decades,
Oh, dude. Thank you.
It goes from, okay, these guys maybe remind me of like the Menzingers, but then all of a sudden you pull all the stops and it sounds like I'm listening to like a hardcore punk band from like the 90s,
Yeah,
So-
That was the goal.
that is absolutely the goal. Our favorite bands do that. Like one of our favorite bands, and probably, we kind of aforementioned them, but the band Such Gold was really huge in kind of showing us that you can have both worlds. Like they kind of live in like that, like melodic hardcore world and the pop punk world and like the like kind of the straight up punk rock world. But the best bands do that, like even like 4 Years Strong. Like sometimes you're like, this is like a straight up, like melodic hardcore band or it's a pop punk band. And it's because our favorite bands do that, it's just become like, well, why can't we write a hardcore song and like a, kind of like softer, punk rock kind of like ballad type song?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you just kind of hit on it there too. Like our influences are all over the map too.
Yes.
Right. You just mentioned the Menzingers. That's definitely one we both listen to. But it can go from like the Menzingers. It can go from American football to Snapcase. Right.
Yeah.
It could be like beat down hardcore, and we're just like, we want to write this stuff,
Yeah.
but we also want it to kind of sound like the other stuff, and it all kind of finds its way into the same song.
Yeah.
But for the same album.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I love. I love those surprises. People probably get tired of me saying that on the show, but I love bands that surprise you and you don't kind of expect like the same kind of formula over and over again, and
Thank you, man.
yeah, I feel as a songwriter myself, I feel like I stuck to that a little too much, so I admire it extremely when I see other songwriters just changing it up,
You've been in a few bands, right?
Honestly, I've only been in 2 bands, The Projection and then the Green Day tribute band I'm
Okay.
currently in. Those
Dude,
are literally the only bands I've been in.
The Projection, I can't find it. I've like looked before. Is it on like Spotify, iTunes?
It's on Spotify, yeah.
I gotta like look harder, like look again or something. Because like I remember like I saw a post about it, like with your old spiky hair.
Yes.
And on Facebook, like, oh, dude, like this was good. Like 2001 is it like a directory record kind of thing?
Was it Victory Records thing?
No, like a directory records kind of sound.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we had definitely more of the 2000s, 90s, 2000s pop punk style,
We're gonna listen to that tonight. Yep.
Yeah.
The
So
Projection.
yeah, check it out and let me let me know what you think. And if you have a good laugh or anything, let me know about that too.
We definitely know.
So before we close out, and I do want to play a year without sleep. But before we go, anything else you want to mention about, excuse me, about bad planning?
Sure. I mean, well, first of all, thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Of course.
This has been awesome. We got a couple shows coming up in December. We'll just say it right now because we weren't going to announce it until a little later, but why not?
Sure.
Here's the deal, folks. We're shooting a music video December 18th in a live setting.
Sweet.
We would absolutely love for everyone to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun, and there'll be some really awesome special guests. We hope you guys can make it out.
Awesome. Well,
and thanks for all the love and support everyone's given us. It's been huge. Shout out to Jeremy from Jumpstart Records. Shout out to Mike from Earshot Media. Shout out to the Pop Punk and Pizza podcast.
Yeah.
We were like fanboying before we came on here, by the way. Like, because we're talking about like the talent pool.
Yeah.
Like Bill Stevenson, Mike Herrera. Bad planning. Like, what I mean? Like,
thank you guys. But see, to me, in my eyes, you're right up there with them.
Too kind.
You
too
know,
kind, man. Thank you so much, bro.
I love meeting new people or meeting people where we're like, yeah, we like know each other, but we don't like know each other. Like, you know, so it's good to finally make that connection, and hopefully, sometime down the line we'll be able to do this again. So
awesome. Dude, thank you so much. We'd absolutely love to. Anytime.
All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of the night. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, brother.
No problem.
I love the
A year without sleep here on Pop Punk and Pizza Podcast by Bad Planning. Let's give Alex and Jack another round of applause. Thank you guys so much for being on the show. I'm glad that we could finally make it happen. Don't forget our wonderful title sponsor, Pop Punk Takeout. They're a monthly subscription box that delivers merchandise from pop punk artists from all over the world directly to your door in a takeout box. And they have two different versions you can choose from, one that's larger, one that's smaller. And also, in honor of the holidays, they have, for the very first time, a very Pop Punk Christmas Volume 1 compilation disc, CD, that you can order right now at poppunktakeout.com. It includes a lot of artists that have actually been here on the podcast. So like Settle Your Scores, TLB, Tiny Kingdoms, Eugene Levy, College Radio. The list goes on and on and on. It actually does not ship until December 13th, but you can buy the compilation right now at poppunktakeout.com. Please be sure to give them a follow on social media as well at Pop Punk Takeout. So without further ado, our main guest this evening I want to introduce to you is the guitarist of Tsunami Bomb, but also has his own record label as well. Let's welcome Andy, I believe it's Pohl, to the show, but he's going to correct me if I'm wrong.
Hey, how's it going?
Is it Pohl? Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, Pohl. You had it right,
Okay.
for sure.
I wasn't sure. Like, I guess I'm sure you get that a lot. They're not really sure with the OHL, but I'm like, well, that's got to be Pohl. It's just spelt a different way. But yeah, welcome to Pop Punk and Pizza, Andy. It's so good to finally meet you in person. Or
Yeah, thank
virtually,
you so much.
anyway. I feel like kind of like with Bad Planning, this was another one that kind of took a little bit of time to finally happen, but I'm glad it finally did. You had reached out to me several months ago about being on the show, but also getting some of your artists on your record label onto the show as well, which that's actually going to be coming up next week. We're going to have Bumsy and the Moochers on. Which I'm super stoked about that. But let's first, before we get into the label side of things, how did you end up getting in Tsunami Bomb? Because I know you entered, it was like end of last decade, right? Like 2017 or so?
Approximately, yeah. Like I can't remember the exact date of like when I was kind of brought into the fold, because initially I got brought in essentially as like a hired gun, where I was going to be coming in as the guitarist when they played shows, but it hadn't been formally, put together that I was going to be a full-time member of the band. And it was, I think, about 6 or 7 months later, right around December of that year, that they formally said, hey, we've all talked about it, and like, we love you. We'd like to have you, become like a full-time member of the band. So, yeah.
That's awesome. How did you just know the band? How did you come across that opportunity?
So, yeah, I've actually known Tsunami Bomb in its various, incantations since pretty much day one.
Okay.
A little known fact, I was actually at their first show ever.
No way.
Yeah. I was
Wow.
I was attending college in the Central Valley of California, and just south of where I was going to school, there was this little town called Merced, which had a very small DIY all ages punk venue.
Nice.
Called the Fatty Mocha. And
I love it.
The band had a show in their hometown booked for the following night. But what they chose to do was to do kind of a warm-up show in a town that was out of town, a place that was out of town.
Okay.
So I think it was just kind of like to get their feet wet, coming into their first official hometown show, which I thought was really smart, actually.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's really smart for just starting out, I mean, as a band.
Yeah, I had no idea about the band. I knew a few people in the band just from previous bands that they had been in, but I really knew nothing about the band. But yeah, I was at their first show ever. Wow. And just through the years, I played shows with them in the bands that I was in, just kind of became friendly with them. Another band, a band that I was in for a little while, actually did like a full tour with them prior to my being in the band.
Okay.
At that time, but needless to say, I've had a relationship with the band for as long as they've been around. Yeah.
So that probably definitely helped like put your foot in the door after, touring with them and your other band. Maybe it was when it kind of crossed their mind, oh, we need a guitar player. Well, why don't we ask Andy?
Well,
You know?
and actually the circumstances around being asked to come in, within the last few years was really because at the time I was living with Dominic. Yeah, we were
Okay.
housemates in Oakland, California, and
Okay.
so I saw what was stirring, and I was kind of there when the band decided to kind of regroup and release Trust No One, and they did their first initial shows, and it was great to get reacquainted with Brian and Oubliette and Gabe, and then to meet Kate. And so I got to see firsthand like what was going on, and because Dominic and I were living together, he and I would just kind of we would just talk about it a lot. And then as time moved on, Brian had to leave, and then they had Chris LaForge come in for a little while, not as a permanent member, but pretty much as like a hired gun, kind of like what I initially got brought in.
Yeah.
Chris, was great. And, I mean, may he rest in peace. Unfortunately, he passed away shortly after I got brought into the band. And, it's not like he left under bad circumstances or anything. It was more like a logistical thing where he was living in Texas. And I think just it made more sense for them to try to work with somebody who was more local. And I cannot necessarily for sure know the exact reasons in total why they chose to no longer work with him, but ultimately they asked me, and I was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely! Like, let's do this. I'd
Yeah.
love to be on board." Yeah,
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, Tsunami Bomb's actually from Arizona, right?
No,
They're
the
not.
band's from Petaluma, California.
For some reason, I had Arizona in my brain, and I have no idea why.
Well, I can say for sure, just through my knowledge of the history of the band, apparently Arizona was one of the first places outside of their hometown where they did build a pretty large following.
Maybe
And
that's why.
yeah, like from what I've heard, it was shows in the Arizona area um, that really kind of made a splash for, I think, Joe Escalante at Kung Fu. Because I think what happens, if memory serves, they had a few shows with the Vandals, and I think that took them to Arizona. And because of the response they had, I think Joe Escalante was like, "Oh, who's this?"
Yeah, and
So,
Vandals were on Kung Fu, right?
well, Joe
Or
Escalante, who's the bassist for the Vandals,
mhm.
owned Kung Fu. He's the one who started the
Okay.
label. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Gotcha. See, I didn't know that connection. Mainly when I think of Kung Fu, I just think of all the show must go off DVDs. Like that's
Right.
the main thing I think of. I know there was other things that they did, but I felt like that series was widely known and they had produced like so many of my favorite bands live shows in that series. In fact, I still upstairs, if I go upstairs, I've still got like two or three of the DVDs. I've got the Goldfinger one, the Real Big Fish one, and I think one other one. I can't remember. But
I mean, yeah, they did a bunch. I know they have an Alkaline Trio one that's pretty
yeah,
great. Obviously Tsunami Bomb did one.
yes.
Yeah, and like I think that Kung Fu Records was a pretty good outlier within that whole kind of 90s punk boom, because you had Fat, which I mean, I'm not trying to cast aspersions against Fat Records, but they have a sound, like there's kind of like this Fat sound.
Yep.
Epitaph for a while kind of had their thing. But I think Kung Fu did a good job at really mixing things up a little bit. You had Tsunami Bomb, you had obviously the Vandal stuff, you had a sort of Jelly Beans, and God, who else was on that label for a minute? Oh, I think the Ataris, I think, released a record on there.
Okay.
Audio Karate, you know.
That's the one I
Mhm.
was thinking of. I was like, who
Yeah.
was it? It was them. Whatever happened to Kung Fu? Are they still around? I don't really. I have not heard anything about them in a long time.
So Kung Fu as a label still exists. From what I understand, it basically got bought by a bigger umbrella company.
Okay.
And so I think, yeah, Cleopatra Records is who effectively now owns the Kung Fu brand.
Okay, I'm familiar with. I think I was introduced to Cleopatra when. Oh, that was sometime in the last couple years, I think, when I had first heard of Cleopatra Records. And I'm trying to remember what band it was that was pushing a release. I
Well,
guess it doesn't.
they work with a lot of bands.
They
Like,
do.
and it's a surprising number of bands actually. And from what I gather, Cleopatra, in terms of what they did with Kung Fu, it isn't the first time that they've done that, where they've just essentially purchased, the old catalogs from, these smaller labels, and it's essentially just brought them into their umbrella. And it's in a lot of ways a pretty good business model, because you're effectively just bringing in, a huge catalog,
Yeah.
which, hopefully over time will pay itself off and then reap dividends.
Absolutely. It was Buck 09. That's what I was trying to think of. I
Okay,
know
yeah.
I believe the last full length they did was through Cleopatra.
Mm.
Or they did something with Cleopatra. Because I remember talking with them about that when they were on the podcast a couple of years ago, which doesn't really I know it doesn't really matter, but it was like but how those things bug you. You're like, it's on the tip of your tongue, but you can't think of it.
Sure.
Um, but um, but let's talk about your label. Sell the Heart Records. When did that come into play for you? And was this something you started before joining Tsunami Bomb, or was this after the fact?
Yeah, so Sell the Heart Records started before my time in Tsunami Bomb. It started right around 2010. I was living in the Santa Rosa area, like North Bay, California. And really, it was a group of friends of mine. We kind of got together and thought that it might be cool to, start a label and kind of document the music scene that was happening at the time. It was really flourishing. There was a good, vibrant music scene up there. And there's a lot of interesting bands, like, you had punk, indie rock. Like, indie rock was like really big, like a lot of that Angular kind of Minus the Berry kind of, indie rock. And there were a couple of labels that existed, but most of which were just kind of in name only, like they weren't actually doing anything. And so we thought that would be kind of cool. And we had these grand ideas that, we wanted to like build like this kind of big machine that would be this kind of all-in-one stop for a band, where you could take a band, you could release the record, you could, manage them per se, like, kind of help them book shows, like do the PR for them, like it would all be in-house, right? And it's not a new idea, like, there's plenty of labels that do this, but no one was really doing that for these really, really, really small bands, right? Usually by the time that you've gotten to the point where you're working with a label that can do all of that, you've already built a pretty big following on your own, right?
Yeah, and you've already got your manager and your booking agent usually separately,
Right. And we wanted to try to bring something, very much in the DIY spirit, but that would encompass a lot of those same facets on a smaller scale, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And it started in earnest, and we had a lot of great ideas, but I think unfortunately, just because of not really understanding a lot of how like these mechanisms work, and like also not really having a lot of, I guess, things to do, we just didn't necessarily have a lot going that initial year, right? Because here we are, like we're all pretty broke, and a lot of this costs money, and then you have to have the time, and we're all busy, and so it eventually kind of became this thing that I was kind of leading the charge on. And it's not because of nobody else really caring. It was just more like, there's not really much for anyone else to do, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of kept going with it, and I was working with a couple of local artists, and then I started branching out, and I worked with a couple bands from around the Northern California area. We released a few records, and it was okay. I mean, how do you really gauge what success looks like, when you've never done something? And, we saw a few bands do some really cool things, but then a few bands kind of fell by the wayside and it didn't really stick.
And
So,
that's all part of it, right? And
yeah,
that's got to be the hard part of, because you're investing money and time into that artist, and you're like hoping that they don't fizzle, and
right.
then they do, and maybe you didn't make your return, and it's, but I suppose that's life, right?
Well, right. And I mean, I've said this on a few different podcasts, and I'm sure that I'm not the first person to say this at all. One of the best pieces of advice that I got was from this guy named Josh Staples, who's, he plays in the band The Velveteen. He plays in the band The New Trust. He actually had his own record label with his partner for many years. And I remember I asked him one time, I was like, hey man, do you have any advice I'm starting? And he's like, just don't. Like, it's a money pit, it's a time suck.
Yeah.
It ends up really being kind of crappy, and I understood what he meant. Like, I mean, he obviously enjoyed it, and it's a labor of love. And I think that that's really what he was trying to say. It's like, dude, don't do it trying to expect that you're going to make any money. And I get that. Like, I understand that this kind of an endeavor, unless you have like an unlimited pool of resources to just kind of throw away, it really is something where you kind of have to go into it like you would if you were going to, like, say, Vegas to gamble, or making an investment in a stock. Like, only put in as much as you're willing to lose, really, right?
Yeah.
And that's really been my MO this entire time. Is if I take band X and if I am convinced that they've got all of the pieces that I would kind of require, to work with them, I'm willing to put X number of dollars in with the long-term goal of breaking even. Like, long-term, right? So even if it doesn't happen within 90 days, a year, or even 2 years, if 10 years from now, I see that has come back to me in some way, shape, or form, either through digital sales or streaming, or 10 years from now selling their LP for $2, because nobody else wanted to buy it, that's fine as far as I'm concerned. What I really hope, though, is that they can see that expectation is really, I think, realistic. And because I don't want to work with bands that have their heads in the clouds thinking like, oh, like, it's going to take off and it's going to be awesome. And it's like, whoa, easy, it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, exactly. Usually that return is slow, as you pointed out. Like, I mean, just think about, I don't know, I guess it's similar how sometimes it'll take a band 10 or 20 years to their well-known debut record. It'll take 10 or 20 years and it'll finally sell 1 million copies. Like, it took that long. And so sometimes it could definitely take that long on a smaller scale to just break even or to pay off.
Well, and it's funny you mention, a band who's been around for like 20 years, right? And to see, and we're talking about bands that are pretty big. Like, to sell 1 million copies of anything is insane. Like, I mean, that number, just get it out. You should have it out of your head. 1 million is just like, don't even think about it, right? But
Yeah.
by the time you've reached that, it's like, dude, you're like huge,
But still, I mean,
but an average kind of general speaking band could very well see 1 million streams of their song. Like, that's not out of the picture at all. I mean, shoot, you can post something on TikTok, and if it catches fire, it gets 1 million views in a day.
Yes.
It's crazy, So there are mechanisms in place that bands can utilize to get that kind of coverage and to get that kind of audience. It really just depends on which mechanisms you want to use and which ones you're most comfortable with. Do you want to go with like the traditional way of doing it, where it's like, okay, we record album, we release album, we put album out, we try to sell it. Hopefully we sell all of them. Or do you want to become a TikTok band and like just really only produce stuff and put it on little videos? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. As a matter of fact, it's like, dude, more power to you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But really what I think is the I guess wisest way to do it is to incorporate all of those things. And there can be a lot of pushback about that from artists, because they're like, well, I don't want to take the time, and it takes away from the music, it takes from the soul of it. And I get that, you know, but in this paradigm that we're in, and I think more of it comes down to like a mindset shift, where you're like, okay, this is a tool. I'm going to use the tool. I have to learn to use it. I'm going to make it work for me, you know, with the way that I'm comfortable, and whatever that yields, just be happy with, you know?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. It's something I've been toying around in my mind too about TikTok. You know, that's like the latest tool that everyone's using to promote whatever it is that they've got going on, you know, music especially. And it's like you can use those things, um, but you don't have to do like what someone else is doing, you know. You just got to find a way to harness being yourself that is also engaging, which is difficult, but it's not impossible. You
Not at
know,
all.
if that makes sense. Like you just gotta, just because you start a TikTok doesn't mean you have to like all of a sudden act like this crazy ass person, and like that's not you at all. Why
Right.
would you want to be like, you don't have to be fake about it. You just gotta find a way to be yourself that's also going to engage properly to get the kind of return that you want, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean, I've seen some bands really leverage, like for instance, TikTok in a way that has really worked for them. And a lot of it can absolutely be about the music and your art. But um like you said, you kind of have to trial and error it a little bit, because you know the people that are going viral on TikTok, I don't think that there's really a rhyme and a reason to it. Like, it's either awesome and people get attached to it super fast and it just catches fire, or maybe it's the familiarity piece, or maybe it's just because of this stew of like the visual and the audible, and maybe just the, I don't know, the timing, you know, and I don't know. I mean, you're never going to know unless you give it a shot. And I think I think that for people that are like discrediting it, like right out of the gate, that's, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like,
Yes.
you know, so
It's like
you've already lost.
yeah,
At that
like
point.
you haven't even
Yeah.
tried it, you know,
Right.
and you're already shooting it down. So
Right.
I suppose it's like anything else. It's like, you know, quote unquote, making it big as an artist. Like
Right.
that's also, you're talking about the right place, the right time. It's kind of the same thing with a viral video. Sometimes it just happens to be the right place, the right time that video is uploaded, and the right person sees it and they share it. And let's say that person has, you know, 5 million followers, and then that's all it, you know, or maybe there's multiple accounts that have millions of followers that share, you
Right.
know, your TikTok, and they just happen to have seen it because you just happen to have posted it at the right time. So,
Right.
you know, that's another. I mean, the chances. I'm sure the chances of that are pretty slim too, considering all the people in the world, and there's like what, like 3 billion users on TikTok. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and when you consider how many billions of people are using it, and you think about somebody having a million views of their video, I mean, that's a very small percentage.
Yeah, right.
And that's a million, so,
Yeah, yeah.
so
It's just I don't know. It's wild. That's definitely been a big subject on the podcast this last year is TikTok.
yeah.
And I've noticed that a lot of artists or celebrities have started to jump on the bandwagon, and I think it's just because they're like watching some of these younger up and coming artists like get these great responses and promotion on TikTok. So they're like, okay, they're like, I got this, and they start doing the same thing, and it goes well for them, Like right now, I can't remember if I was talking about this on the podcast or off the podcast with someone, but we were talking about Pierre from Simple Plan. Like he's
Yeah.
been doing really well on TikTok, So someone who's already got that foundation for themselves is using that tool to help even further.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he certainly wouldn't be the first person. I mean, you've got people like, I know it was mentioned with the other band, like Mike Herrera, from MXPX. Like he's got a podcast. It's like a really popular podcast. Or Damian Albarn from, I'm sorry, Damian Abraham from the band F'd Up. Is it cool to swear on this?
Yeah. No, you can. Yeah. Nope. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's from the band Fucked Up. Like he has a really popular podcast called Turn Out a Punk. Right.
Okay, I didn't realize that was his.
Yeah, and like there's a bunch of different people like within the music community, like not even just the punk rock landscape, that have gone on and like they've built huge platforms on various channels, like either TikTok or Patreon or Instagram. I mean, you kind of got to pick your poison. And I mean, each one of these different vehicles operates in a different way. And a lot of them change the rules on you really quickly, and like you kind of gotta get used to it, and it becomes a drag. Like I will tell you straight up, like as somebody who kind of has to stay on top of this stuff, like to the best of my ability and the amount of time that I have to dedicate to it. The only one that makes any real sense to me is honestly honestly it's TikTok, because TikTok just seems like just be yourself, be natural, and like whatever, people will either respond to it or they won't, right? While as Facebook is just it's a dinosaur, like they've completely shut off any kind of organic engagement. So it's like using it is a completely useless waste of time as far as I'm concerned. However, you still need to have it because it's like your key to everything else. Right.
Yeah, it's weird how that works, right? It's like even though you don't get a big, it's a very small response, but it's like you still need it though, And it's funny because I'll be scrolling through my feed and I'll see a post from a really well-known band, and I see that that picture like got over 1,000 likes, and I'm like, man, I wish I could get 1,000 likes. But then if you go to said band's page and you see actually in total how many the page has, let's say it's 2 million, and they only got a 1,000 or 2,000 likes on a page, like what the hell is that? It's like what is that?
It's such a like there's been a lot of talk about this, like the whole dissonance between when we look at social media and like the way that we respond to it, right? And I know we're kind of getting off topic here, but
no, I feel like this is right on topic with a record label and being in a band or like honestly any creative outlet. This is all stuff we're talking about,
Sure, yeah, I can see that for sure. But like when you look at the way that you personally are responding to how any given post gets reacted to, right? And I'm not saying that this is specific to artists, but I think in some ways it's more relevant to artists and for people who are making a product, whether or not it's physical or not, right? you're constantly trying to get it in front of as many people as you possibly can. And you're trying to see what people are going to do with it, right? And yeah, like when they've effectively closed the gate on any kind of natural movement, right? It's soul crushing, right? And it's this pay to play paradigm. And in a lot of ways, like they kind of frame it as like, well, if people cared about it enough, they would like it, and then that would tick up the algorithm and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, dude, because it didn't work that way. Like just 2 years ago, it was a completely different animal. Like you'd see way more engagement. You'd see way more this and that. So it's obvious that they're closing, the gates on you, and
absolutely,
like the funnel is being lessened, right?
Yeah.
And so it's no wonder that people are either leaving these platforms altogether, or they're just kind of saying, you know what, screw it, I don't want to do this anymore, because it's not working, right?
Yeah.
And to that, I would always say, it's like, don't let that stuff like guide your thinking, because it's not real. It isn't real, like, the reactions you get from like a live show, or like playing your music in front of people and like actually having like a real conversation with people, like that's the real shit, like that's the stuff you really should care about. But it's twisted, man. Like somebody used the word insidious the other day to talk about the effects that social media has on people. I actually thought that was very, very spot on, because I was like, dude, it's true. It's all planned. It's all, and I'm not trying to be like all conspiracy theory like this, but there are people who are paid a lot of money to understand these things and to know the psychology behind how these things affect people. And it's absolutely done by design.
Yeah, it just going down to simply like, and this is true to the core. This is, I feel like, a fact. Mm-hmm. You could post on your personal Facebook page right now saying, hey, I've got Mark Hoppus from Blink-182. He's putting out an album on, Sell the Heart Records, right? And maybe you'll get a response from it, maybe not. I'm guessing no. But then you can go on there, and if you post a picture of your dad dying, or like of your cute kid or something like that, it seems like those things are the ones that get. Or if you share, I'm trying to think of the other thing. I just noticed that, when you're actually promoting a product, any kind of product, whether, as you said, whether it's physical or not, you post about that, you just don't get the reaction. But if you're sharing something about a death, or I don't know, what's another example?
Like you bought a house or something.
Yeah. Okay. There's another one. You bought a house. And it seems like those things are the ones that get traction. Like I will literally, if I post on my personal Facebook, say, brand new episode of Pop Punk and Pizza out now with, Andy from Tsunami Bomb, that might get 2 likes. But then if I post a picture of my son raking leaves, it'll get, 100 likes.
Right. Yeah. So much of this is it comes down to the technologies that are being used. There's like machine learning. There's a concept of like, what's the word? Like there's algorithms that can basically like look at pictures and look at words and like what you've typed, and they can basically make they can make a concept of like, is this selling something? Right.
Yeah.
And it throttles the hell out of it, and let's face it, Facebook is a business. It's always been a business. That's been the idea from day one, or maybe not from day one, but day 2, so they became a thing, right?
Yeah.
Because anytime you get something that gains traction, you get that many users, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to monetize the hell out of it. You're going to find a way to make money off of it, because that's what people do.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a publicly traded company.
Right. And it's free to use. You're not forced to use it, so I mean, like, what was it? So in my day job, I work in programming, right? And so, like,
Okay.
I got to learn some of this stuff like kind of firsthand when I learned how to become a programmer. And a lot of
Yeah.
this stuff was like stuff that I already kind of knew because of like the just having used social media. But then I understood like what it was that it actually is, dude. 90% of the internet is basically a giant bulletin board. That's all it is. It's just a bulletin board and you can leave comments. That's all it is. It's not that complicated. But once you start advertising and like marketing and like all these things, and you start bringing in all of these algorithms that are able to take literally millions of words at a time and just make these ideas of what it is that you're trying to invoke with what you're trying to push on your platform. Now it's more than that, but they're going to try to milk every single dollar that they possibly can. And if it's not you giving them money, it's advertisers giving them money.
Yeah.
By selling you stuff.
Yeah.
And it's
I love
frustrating.
right. I love how we got into this whole thing, but I think it's just directly related to, it all comes back to music, or like I said, anyone who's doing anything creative. It's just, and I think that's another reason why TikTok has grown so quickly in just 3 years,
Right.
And it's probably the same reason that I don't know if Snapchat had that same spike in growth or not when it first
Not
came
sure.
out. I feel like it didn't, but regardless, you know,
if memory serves, I think Snapchat kind of blew up, and I think it blew up globally, but I don't think it hit in the United States the same way. I mean, I never really used it. I have it, but I don't think I've ever really used it.
yeah,
But anyway, yeah, like TikTok really does feel like it's the one that if you were to put any real energy into any of them, it's probably the one that I would guide people to.
yeah,
It's got, I think, the steeper learning curve, at least to learn how to really leverage it. And I think it's probably going to take the most time to really make it worth your investment. But I think that it can yield the biggest return from that.
yeah, because the more you invest, usually the more your return is.
Well, and it's not even money. Like I think it would be just more about your time.
Oh, no, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like investing your time, whereas like it's easy to just put a picture on Facebook and say, here,
Right.
like, but on TikTok, you really have to think, like, and I've like Pop Punk and Pizza has a TikTok, but I haven't done like anything that's like super, super, like creative or original, kind of like how everyone else is doing on TikTok, just because I haven't put that time in yet. But the more we talk about this, the more I'm like, damn, I need to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I have a TikTok for the label. And I'm not sure like what the right approach would be for me to really try to use it as a growth vehicle, because like, sure, I could go on there, I could talk about the bands, but I only work with X number of bands, right?
Yeah.
So coming up with like fresh ideas every single day, if you even want to use it every single day, which, I mean, there's no real rule that says that you have to use it every day, right? But the main objective would be that anything you put out there is going to be of some kind of value, right?
Yep.
So that when somebody takes that moment to pause, to start looking at your content for even what is it they say, you get 3 seconds, I think, is like usually, if that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's about it.
Right.
That's probably the longest. It might be a second or two, but yeah, 3 is probably the max.
Yeah, so you got to hit them like right away with something that's gonna keep them coming, and it's gonna. I mean, because I'm not a marketing genius. I'm not a person who's well versed on this stuff, but I think in so many ways, like, you just kind of have to think about like what you like and what you respond to, and then consider the fact that there are more than likely a lot of people who act and think very similarly to you. And so if that's your key demographic, then maybe that's the type of content you should be looking into, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's just a guess,
Yeah.
But like a lot of what I talk about is, I talk about the bands, I talk about the releases, I talk about maybe tour dates that are coming up, and then maybe I'll just talk about like my favorite records or something like that. And then what I found is what I found is really the key is you have to seek engagement. Like you have to try to ask questions. You have to ask questions that people are interested in answering,
Yep.
because you could just spit words and be basically yelling at people, and that's not always going to, I think, yield a lot. But if you start like that whole engagement process of like, hey, what do you think about this? Or like, I was thinking about this and I wanted to, like that kind of stuff, I think tends to yield more engagement. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Especially if you're talking about something that's a passionate subject, like for instance, something that gets brought up all the time on this podcast is, whether pineapple on pizza is acceptable. Like that is something that people for some reason love to battle about and have that conversation. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like you could easily do something on TikTok with pineapple and pizza. And I'm sure someone has. I'm sure you could just go on TikTok right now and like search pineapple pizza and there'd be, all kinds of different things on it.
Yeah, I'm sure that there has been. Yeah.
Yeah, but
the answer is yes.
anyway.
By the way, pizza.
Yeah,
Pineapple on
right.
pizza. Very acceptable. Yeah.
I think so too. I like
Yeah.
pineapple on pizza.
It's a nice acid, like
It is. Well, it's the sweet and salty
Mhm.
combo,
Totally.
But we could go on forever about social media and TikTok, but hopefully, I think there is some valuable information or just thoughts, at least in what we were talking about.
Yeah.
At least I think so. But Sell This to Heart Records. What are some of the the current releases that you're pushing right now that you want people to check out?
Sure. Yeah. So the ones we most recently announced that are coming out very soon. This Friday actually is the full length from the band States of Nature. They're a East Bay. They're kind of a mixture of like post punk, kind of garage, little psych rock, kind of desert rock vibe. It's a compilation of 3 of their previous EPs as well as 2 brand new tracks. It is coming out on vinyl, but the vinyl will not be coming out for a little bit because of the backlog with all the vinyl.
Yep.
But we're releasing the album in full digitally this Friday. The album is called Songs to Sway, and you can find them at our Bandcamp. You can find them on streaming sites everywhere. They have their own Bandcamp as well. I cannot recommend this band enough. They're incredible, great folks. Features members of the band Dead to Me, Everybody Row. So there's a little bit of familiarity there. Great chops, great songs, super rad people. Cannot recommend them enough. Another band that we're working with that has an album coming out later this year is called the Jukebox Romantics. They're kind of a heartfelt kind of pop punk band from the East Coast, New York, to be specific. They've been around for many years. This is our first record with them. It's an EP. It's called Fires Forming, and it's their first record in a few years. But like I said, they've been around for a long time. They've done a lot of touring. They actually, just before the pandemic hit, they did a really rad tour with Face to Face and Less Than Jake. So
maybe that's why their name sounds familiar. I'm like, why does that name sound so familiar?
Yeah. But they're great. They're really for folks who really like bands like Bouncing Souls or like the who else am I thinking of? They're the one with Brian Fallon in the band, Gaslight Anthem. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
So it's like kind of soulful, like kind of heartfelt punk rock.
Cool.
Great sing-alongs. And then beyond that, we've had a few releases that came out not that long ago. We had a 4-band split 7-inch picture disc. It featured the band Next Scars from New York, a band called American Thrills from Connecticut, a band called Tired Radio from New York, and then a band called Nightmares for a Week, who I think are from New York as well, if memory serves. They're kind of a super group, but they each had a song on the split, so it was like basically a mini comp,
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
Yeah. And then previous to that, we had a 3-song, 7-inch EP from a band called M Section, who were kind of more like thrash punk from the North Bay area. And yeah, we're gearing into next year. We've already got a few things in the works. Haven't announced anything yet, but we probably will in a few weeks, kind of gearing up to start promoting those. Yeah.
Awesome. And where can everyone find you on social?
You know, I'd say the place to really check us out would be Bandcamp, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of really quickly point on something about the whole social media thing. If there was a social network that I would really point people to in terms of music, go to Bandcamp, because there is a social aspect to it. Like, you can create a profile and you can follow people without buying anything. Like,
That's true.
You can just follow bands and labels, like, and so you can always be aware of what's happening with them with no requirement for you to purchase anything, you know?
Yeah.
You know, you can set limits as to how often you can let people listen before they have to buy something.
Yes.
But a lot of bands just let people stream it no matter what, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Bandcamp, it's just selltheheartrecords.bandcamp.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Sell the Heart. You can find us on TikTok, Sell the Heart Records. You can find us on Facebook, Sell the Heart. But seriously, don't even bother with Facebook.
As we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's selltheheartrecords.com, right?
Yeah, just www.selltheheartrecords.com. I try to keep that updated. Actually, I just did an update on that the other night. So it's got information, and it'll link you to all of the relevant places to find stuff. We also have a YouTube channel. You can just find it. It's youtube.com/selltheheart. Yeah.
And then anything coming up with Tsunami Bomb this year?
This year through the end of the year, not really. We've been kind of locked down writing new material.
Sure.
And so the goal is that next year we want to release a new record. You know, a lot of it's going to depend on, you know, because we'll do a vinyl release. And so a lot of that will depend on the scheduling for vinyl. If the backlog is as bad as it's been, you know, depending on when we can record and get everything mixed and mastered, it could go into the next year, but fingers crossed, you know, we can kind of get things in for a release next year.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that's might be that way for a lot of people. It'll be 2023, you know, until.
Yeah.
And let's see, Tsunami Bomb, it was just in the last couple of years you had a new record, right?
Yeah. So over the last few years, so in November of 2019, we released The Spine That Binds, which was our newest full length record of original material, new material. That unfortunately we didn't really get to promote well because, you know, a few months later the pandemic hit, and so
Right.
we were able to play a few shows behind it, but we had plans to do more, and fortunately it all got squashed. But in that time we released a couple of 7-inches. We released the Still Standing 7-inch, and then we had one that was 2 covers. It was Out of Touch, Hollow Notes, and Dead Man's Party from
That's awesome.
Yeah, from Oingo Boingo. And you know, then we started demoing for a new record.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing that whenever it does happen to come out. We just have to be patient.
Yeah, it's coming. Like, we're definitely working on it. The songs are great. I mean, I have a feeling people are going to really be stoked on it. It's songs have a lot of energy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you so much for your time. It was really great talking with you. I did not expect we were going to get into a whole social media debate, but I actually loved that. So
yeah, no problem.
It's always good to you know, kind of brainstorm with others, or like know that we're not alone in our thinking, you know, kind of thing. So, and I know you and I obviously are not the only ones that are thinking about this stuff, but
Right.
I enjoyed you know, geeking out, I guess.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, yeah, this stuff is so it's interesting stuff. I mean, I think it's easy to feel kind of overwhelmed and burnt out on it all.
Yep.
You know, so but you know, it's fun to talk about.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, have a great rest of the night, Andy, and thanks again. Everyone needs to support Sell the Heart Records.
Thanks so much.
Yep,
Appreciate it.
no problem. All right, we'll give Andy one more round of applause. Thank you so much, Andy Pohl of Sell the Heart Records, Tsunami Bomb, for being on the show. And to Alex and Jack of Bad Planning out of Chicago for being on the podcast as well earlier. Please show some love and support to Bad Planning. And, of course, to Pop Punk Takeout. Go to poppunktakeout.com to sign up for the monthly subscription service that delivers merch from pop punk artists from all over the world directly to your door. Also, a very Pop Punk Christmas Volume 2 compilation CD is available for pre-order right now that officially is going to be shipped on December 13th. You got Million Miler on that comp. You also have TLB, which both Tom Higginson of Plain White Tees is a part of those projects. Tiny Kingdoms out of Chicago. You got Settle Your Scores. Cities Never Sleep. Eugene Levy, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of bands that have been on Pop Punk and Pizza. So poppunktakeout.com. Also follow them on socials at Pop Punk Takeout. And while you're at it, follow us on social media at Pop Punk Pizza Pod and poppunkpizzapod.com. You can catch up on previous episodes there or find links to your favorite podcast platform. And to buy merch as well, like our wonderful Lucky Chinese Pizza Cat t-shirt. You can also get a hoodie of this. There's quite a few other options as well for this really cool design where it's got a cat opening a slice, or he's opening a pizza box, and he's helping himself to the whole pizza, because why not, right? Even pizza looks good to a cat. I actually have a cat that will jump on the table while you're eating dinner because, well, he wants what you're eating. So use that promo code POPPUNK to get $2 off your order in our merch store at poppunkpizzapod.com. I look forward to talking with you next week. We do a live stream every single Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Time on our Facebook, our Twitch, and our YouTube. And our theme song is sung by Chris DeMakes of Less Than Jake.